Welcome to the many interpretations of Irritator. Irritator is a Spinosaurid that lived in the early Cretaceous of what is now Brazil. There's not a lot of media depictions out there. I'm sure that most of you knew that already. However, there might be more than you assume. So just without further ado, let's just get right into the video. Our first depiction comes from the Lost World animated TV series. Which is something that I've never heard about. I didn't know that they made one of these, and that's really interesting. It's quite fitting that Irritator makes an appearance in this, because little fun fact, we only know of one species of Irritator, that being Irritator challengeri. Now, the species name of challengeri is a reference to Professor Challenger, who is a character that makes an appearance in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World novel. So again, quite fitting that Irritator makes an appearance in a Lost World adaptation. It has an interesting design. You got like a very small skull with a small snout and a reduced crest on top of the head. They also do seem pretty small themselves. Irritator was certainly not huge by Spinosaurid standards anyway. It was one of the smaller Spinosaurids that we know of. It was not small by our standard, like it's estimated at around 8.3 meters in length or 27 feet, but compared to other Spinosaurids like Spinosaurus itself, it was decently small. The snout shape is really interesting in this depiction because it's just very thin towards the tip of the snout. It's kind of similar to some older Irritator reconstructions that kind of made it look like that. Now, to be clear, we don't really know what Irritator's snout looked like. We don't have the tip of the snout. At least we don't have a guaranteed tip of the snout. I'm sure many of you are already typing this, but there is a Spinosaurid tip of the snout that is known. But the problem is that's currently identified as another Spinosaurid that lived in Brazil at the same time, known as Angatorama. Now, there are many experts who propose that Angatorama is simply just a junior synonym of Irritator, which means that it simply just is Irritator. But we don't know for sure. The jury is still out for that. The issue is that both Angatorama and Irritator are incredibly fragmentary dinosaurs. So there's no fossils that overlap, which means that we can't compare fossils to see if they're distinct from one another. So as it currently stands, we just don't know if this snout tip actually belonged to Irritator. Now, we do have a fairly complete Irritator skull. The back part of the skull, excluding the tip of the snout, is one of the most complete Spinosaurid skulls out there. In fact, it's used as like reference when other people are trying to reconstruct other Spinosaurids. So it's a fairly good skull in that department. We just don't know what the rest of the snout looked like for sure. So we're likely going to see a lot of different shapes in this video. But yeah, this is a fairly interesting first depiction. One of the most interesting Spinosaurid interpretations that I have seen thus far. Next up comes from Dinosaur King. I believe that this fellow was just in the arcade game. If not, be sure to correct me in the comments down below. But either way, it's got a very interesting design. I quite like the colors. First of all, the colors are really nice to look at. I especially love the red in the crest. But in true Dinosaur King fashion, it is incredibly shrink-wrapped. It doesn't even look like it has much of an esophagus, this poor fella. It's also breaking its wrists and all that fun stuff, but they gave it more of like a rounded snout that it kind of seems like a little bit more like a Baryonyx or a Suchomimus style snout, which is, certainly very interesting. They also have like a very small reduced sail or a hump, I suppose. A lot of Spinosaurids have tall neural spines, which are, the neural spines. Those are what extend from the vertebrae. That's what gives Spinosaurus its sail. Those are just very tall neural spines. Other Spinosaurids like Suchomimus and even Baryonyx do have tall neural spines, but not nearly as large as Spinosaurus's. It's possible that Irritator had a reduced one, but we just don't know for sure due to the lack of available skeletal material that for sure belongs to Irritator. There has been other fossils found of other Spinosaurids, but again, we're just not sure if they belong to Irritator. There's a lot of confusion that surrounds the irritating dinosaur. By the way, if you're curious about why it has that name, Irritator, I got a fun story for you. The skull was initially found by fossil collectors who noted that it was a skull. And so what they decided to do as a result of that was to add plaster onto it, to modify it. They wanted to make it seem like it was a little bit more complete than it already was. That way they can drive up the price a little bit. It was eventually sold to a museum where scientists got a hold of it, and they were tasked with removing all of the modifications that had been made to the skull. Apparently, the process was incredibly annoying and irritating that they named this poor animal Irritator. So, that is its name now. And that will always be the genus name of this Spinosaurid. So yeah, that's like one of the most fun facts about Irritator. There's also a lot of question about whether or not it was illegally sold. There's just a lot of problems with this dinosaur just in general. Next up is its, I guess, very brief appearance in Planet Dinosaur. We just see like a red silhouette of Irritator. It has like a little bit of a reduced sail, and it kind of seems like it has more of a blocky snout, which that seems to be the route that most artists take nowadays. That kind of seems like it's more in line with the base of its snout. It's more in line with that shape. Again, we don't know for sure what the shape truly was, but yeah. I think you can also see a little bit of a crest. Irritator did have a crest that kind of like traveled up the midline of its snout and went up to its head. We don't know the exact size and shape of said crest, but a crest was certainly present. Also, I want to mention this. I remember in the documentary in Planet Dinosaur that a Spinosaurus, of course, attacks a pterosaur. And the evidence that they used to help support this idea is a spinosaurid tooth that was found embedded in the neck vertebrae of a pterosaur. Little fun fact, it seems pretty possible that that tooth belonged to Irritator. In fact, I have a picture up on my wall, I think there's footage of it right now, of that very thing happening, an Irritator attacking a pterosaur. It was a fun little discovery because it showed that obviously Spinosaurs were not obligate fish eaters and they would dabble in eating other things. There was, obviously they mentioned the fact that there was iguanodontian bones found in the stomach contents of a baryonyx, and this possible Irritator tooth in the neck vertebrae of a pterosaur is also support of that too. So it's all very interesting stuff, and Irritator possibly helped us understand quite a bit about this family of dinosaurs as a whole, despite being extremely fragmentary. Also, while we're moving on to video games, I want to mention like the very recent development in Irritator's jaw mechanics. Recently, a couple years ago, it was noted that Irritator was mostly just able to open its lower jaw laterally, like out to the side. This implies that we might have a sort of pelican-like jaw on our hands. Now, the fossil material is still extremely limited. Like, we don't have the rest of the lower jaw. But it's possible that the rest of the lower jaw would have had a sort of joint towards the end of it, which would support, again, a pelican-like jaw to open up. So yeah, there is a possibility that Irritator had a pelican-like jaw. Or maybe it's a possibility that pelicans have an Irritator-like jaw because pelicans came after Irritator. We don't know for sure, of course, but it's certainly really interesting to see these jaw mechanics on Irritator. And I certainly hope that we learn more in the future, and hopefully we find more fossil material that helps better explain these things. Now, we're moving on to the Jurassic franchise, and there's really quite a few in the Jurassic franchise, but they're mostly in video games. Like, the Jurassic franchise just really likes to use them in their projects. Now, first of all, there's Jurassic Park 3 Park Builder. In a lot of ways, this looks very similar to the Dinosaur King one, or maybe the Dinosaur King one looks very similar to this one. I'm not too sure which design came first. But a lot of the same things I said about the Dinosaur King one applies to this one, in the fact it's very thin, has a typical Spinosaurid-shaped snout and a large crest, and a sort of short sail. So it's a cool depiction. I like the colors. It shows up in Jurassic World the game. I like its design here. It has more of a blocky snout, as I've mentioned before. The crest seems to be situated more so towards the tip of the snout, which is an interesting take, and it has a reduced sail. Obviously, in Jurassic World the game, you get to level these guys up, and then, you reach level 40, this guy has more of like some more vibrant colors, some yellows and reds and some blues, and it has more of a developed crest on the tip of its snout as well as in between the eyes, essentially, and more of a developed sail, I suppose. It's interesting. It's a very fun and interesting design. In Jurassic World Alive, we have Gen 1 right here, which I dig these colors. These colors are it. All right, I like these colors. Those are good colors. Red and gray. The snout is a little bit more thin, and you have like a reduced crest. I haven't talked about the arms yet, but we might have found Irritator arms. Might have. Again, there's been other pieces of there's been other Spinosaurid skeletal material found, but again, because we have no overlap, we can't compare fossils, so we don't know for sure if it belongs to Irritator. It doesn't have much of a sail, but I think it is still very much present, and yeah, it's an interesting design. Oh, and I just got sidetracked from the arms. Why did I do that? I don't know. It's likely that Irritator would have like the traditional Spinosaur arms. Pretty huge claws, 3 of them, thumb claw being larger than the other ones. That's likely what it had. Gen 2 applies a lot of the same things, but it just seems like the coloration is a bit different. There's also Jurassic World Play, which is not something I've mentioned quite yet. I've used this app a little bit, but I know what you do is you scan the Mattel toys and then you get like 3D models of them in the game. Uh, and so we get to see like two of the figures here. There's this one that has more of like a blue coloration with some orange. It looks all right. Not a huge fan of the teeth, the way that they're all interlocking like that. Too crocodilian, if you ask me. This one is also interesting. The snout has the same problem, but I really like the tail. It has the basilisk-like tail that you can find on Spinosaurus. That's fun. I like that. That's so cool. And it has a small sail going down the midline of its back. Apparently, Jurassic World Primal Ops had Irritator. I like the blue on this one. Has a pretty reduced snout, and it's more rounded as well. And it does have a crest in the middle of its head, kind of like placed where Spinosaurus's crest is. I think there's also this design right here. Has more orange colors and some reds. And the snout seems a little bit more elongated. And last, but certainly not least, we have the Irritator from Jurassic World Evolution 3. Probably my favorite depiction of the animal that we have looked at here. It's very nice. Like, it's probably my favorite Spinosaurid in the game, period. Like, I just love the way that it looks. It's got the whole, like, Spinosaurid build pretty decently down. I like the tail. The tail is very reminiscent to the tail of Spinosaurus, of course, the basilisk style tail. Some tall neural spines over here, an S-shaped neck, as well as a sort of blocky snout with a little bit of a ridge going down here, a crest right up here, and huge nostrils. So that's something I haven't mentioned yet, but it does seem likely that that Irritator had larger nostrils than other Spinosaurids. Also, it has lips, which is a really fine addition, if you ask me. The arms are also present, and one thing that I've noticed people mentioned, I didn't catch this when I was looking at it initially, is that it does have 4 toes. Now, obviously, theropods do typically have 4 toes, but the difference is that this 4th toe is usually lifted off the ground and wouldn't touch the ground at all on most other dinosaurs. On Irritator, they made it so that it touches the ground. That's possible, actually. There's a chance that it's observed that in some Spinosaurids, it seems like their 4th toe is a little bit longer and might have actually touched the ground. And so, yeah, it's possible that Irritator had four toes when it was walking around. They also gave it webbing, which is a fun little inclusion. Whether it be a swimmer or a wader, that would help out because, like, for swimming, that would help it propel itself forward. If it stuck to the shores, it'd be walking through a lot of mud. That would help it not fall into the mud. It's a very nice design. I really, 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 really like it. Like, it's pretty darn cool, if you ask me. So yeah, that's the Jurassic World Evolution 3 Irritator Challengery. There was also a very interesting figure that I am so sad I never got. That is the Hammond Collection Irritator figure. I like this thing. I think it's so cool. I'm so sad that I wasn't collecting figures when this was released. It was years ago when it was released. I remember seeing it at the mall one time and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Anyway, yeah, I really wish that I got it because I love the colors of it. I love the stripes. I love the crest. The crest shape is really cool. And I really liked the reduced sail. Again, it's just so sad. I really wish that I got it. In fact, I don't have any Irritator figures. Otherwise, I would have put them up there on that shelf. By the way, this is a new thing that I'm doing right here. This shelf has always just had like the same figures, for a while, and sometimes I'd add new ones. But I'm kind of like reorganizing some things in my recording space. I want to make it so that this shelf kind of just has a lot of figures or, fossil replicas that kind of are in theme with the video. Now, because I don't have any Irritator figures, I couldn't put those up there, but I do have other Spinosaurids, so I put them up there. We got the PNSO Spinosaurus, we got the Mesozoic life Spinosaurus, we have the Mattel Ceratoseucops, and right over there you have like the new Popo Suchomimus, which is such a cool figure. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing now. it's going to be in theme with the video. We're going to keep things visually interesting, I suppose. But yeah, that was Irritator. Now, I guarantee that there are some depictions that I have missed because I know that there's quite a few, more relatively obscure depictions of Irritator out there. So if you guys want to let other people know about them, be sure to leave that in the comments down below. But I do hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed making it. I always love talking about Spinosaurids, and so talking about Irritator it's just always really fun. So yeah, that was the Irritator video. And thank you to my patrons and my channel members for supporting me and the channel. You guys are truly, truly amazing. I really appreciate all that you do. If you want to become a patron or a channel member, the links for those are down below. You gain access to some really cool perks that they're just really fun. And again, thank you all so much for your support. But until next time, thank you all so much for watching. Have an awesome day.